is a little tutorial to show you how to make a really simple, no sewing machine required scatter cushion, and you can do it at home. You just need the fabric that you need, a needle and thread, a scatter cushion infill, so you could reuse one that you've got already. I thought I'd put it together because obviously we make them all the time for clients, but actually it's a really fun thing to be able to do at home together with your family or yourself, because scatter cushions are a fantastic way to dress your space and transform the vibe and feel of an area. So I will start and I will start by showing you what fabrics that I've chosen, and I've chosen the pink theme and two different fabrics. So I'm choosing to have one face one style of fabric and the other face another style of fabric, or you could have both faces the same fabric. It's entirely up to you, and that's what's fantastic about this little project, is you can pick and choose whatever you want to do. So first of all, important top tip for scatter cushions and making them, of course, plumptious and lovely. I am using a hollow fibre scatter cushion, and of course you can get feather scatter cushions, and depending on what your preference is or what you've got that you would like to reuse, it will depend on how tight you make your cover. So hollow fibre, I'm going to measure this one because I don't actually know how big this is. I'm going to use inches throughout this. I like to use both, but I'm going to stick to inches. This is a 16-inch square scatter cushion. So I want my cover to finish 15 inches. That's right, isn't it? Double check, check twice, cut once. 16 inches, and I want my cover for a hollow fibre cushion to finish at 15 inches. For a feather cushion, I like to make it super plump, and I like my feather cushion to be 2 inches bigger than my cover. So if it's a 22-inch infill, if it's feather, then your cover wants to be 20-inch, and that just gives it this lovely full fabulousness. So just to make sure, 16-inch, and I want to make it 15 inches. 15 inches. Okay, fabric. Our cut size won't be 15 inches because we need to allow a little bit more for a sewing allowance, but we'll sew on the inside of the line that we cut. And to make things really easy, I'm going to cut them a ½ inch bigger all the way around, so that's a 1 inch bigger total, and I'm going to cut two, one from this fabric and one from that fabric, squares at 16 inches all the way around, and we're going to sew ½ inch in all the way around, and that will give us our 15-inch finish cushion. So I'll cut these now. Check thrice, cut once. You don't need an iron unless you really feel like it. You don't need a sewing machine. We're going to do this all by hand. You just need a pencil, a ruler, a bit of creative spirit, a pair of scissors or shears, a needle and thread. That's what's going to sew this lovely thing together. And if you'd like to use a square, you can. If you don't have a square, you could use maybe the edge of a book. Just an idea. Use what you've got around you. So I'm just going to start by making that first line, and then I'm going to use my bigger ruler to mark the rest of it out. 16 inches up. If you've got a heavy weave fabric, you could actually follow the weave of the fabric as well, if it's obvious. And if you're really feeling up to it, you can use the first one that you cut as a pattern for the second one. But see how you go. Right, cut this out. You don't even need a zip for this, so you literally only need your fabric, needle and thread, and some really basic tools. And that's what makes it so fab and easy. Anybody can be creative. Here we go. Square number 1. So I'm just using a little bench. You could use your kitchen table. If you don't have a workshop, that's fine. Just use whatever space you can. Next one. They're sort of complementing but contrasting. And I love the fact that one's a pattern and one's a plain. Or you could recycle some old fabric from a dress that you like that you're not wearing, or a top that you like, or a shirt that you don't wear anymore. Yeah, you could just do anything. Right. I'm going to use this bit here. That's already been cut into because it's more economical. Right. Because this one's got this sort of lovely small repeat pattern, I'm actually going to use the pattern as a bit of a gauge as to whether I'm cutting it straight. 16. And I'm marking on the back of the fabric, because if I make a mistake, it's not going to be seen. Easy as that. Okay, I've got my 2 squares and I need to find my faces. And what we're going to do is put these pieces of fabric face to face. That's the most important, one of the most important bits. So I've got both facing me and I'm going to put him on there, and now they are face to face. We are going to pin them in place. If you don't have pins, not a big problem. You could still do this by eye and by hand. So I'm going to use my pins edge to edge and just pin these lovely bits of fabric together. A couple more pins and then we're ready to rock and roll. The idea is that we're going to sew along 3 sides. 1, 2, 3. Turn it inside out, because then we've got our cushion virtually nearly finished. And then we're going to stuff our infill inside, pin it and then slip stitch it closed, or stitch it closed. Any kind of stitch doesn't really matter. And then it's done. You could make so many of these. So you need a needle. You could have a straight needle or a curved needle. I quite like a curved needle, but a straight needle is also fine. All we're going to do is a really, really simple running stitch. If you've never done a running stitch before, don't even worry. It's so easy to do. I can show you a nice close-up. Thread the eye of your needle. And then I like to double my thread up because I think it gives a bit of a stronger finish. Don't thread it up too long a length because it makes it really difficult to work with, but that's my arm's distance wide. Tie a knot in the end. There's a couple of ways that you can tie a knot, but anyhow you do it is fine. A couple of knots is good. I'm going to start a 1/2 inch distance in from my edge. That's going to stay open, and then I'm not going to sew. And I'm going to, with my first stitch, tiny little stitch, 1/4 inch, pull that through, and I'm going to loop my needle. I'm going to need my glasses for this. I'm going to loop my needle through my joined up thread. So then it's sort of grabbing hold of itself. And then we're ready to rock and roll. I'm going to put a little bit of tension. Lovely little running stitches all the way along here. My stitches are maximum 1/4 inch apart. If you don't really want them any bigger than that. If you can go smaller, brilliant. And what I love about this, and I mean making in general and creativity, is it's really easy. You can pretty much design whatever cushion you'd like. You could print a panel, you could quilt a panel, you could do anything. It doesn't have to be fabric off a roll, it could be anything. So it's so versatile and so open to your creative input. And already I'm a few inches along. Okay, so I've come to pretty much the end of the length of cotton that I had threaded onto this needle. And what I'm going to do, so that I can get going with a fresh one, I'm going to backstitch onto myself a couple of times, and then as I come up through the fabric, I'm going to loop my needle through those threads there, and that will knot it off without looking bulky on the face. Once you've turned it over, trim it with quite long legs. I call them legs, I don't know what their real name is, but I like to call them legs. And then start again. So a couple of knots. There's lots of ways that you can knot this as well, but this is the easiest and most simple way. So I'm going to create a stitch with my needle, one. I'm going to pull this through, and then I'm going to find the end of my doubled up thread, loop my needle in between those threads, pull it tight so that it sort of knots onto itself, and then we're ready to go again. So I'm at the end now, as you can see, and I'm going to knot this off here in the same way that I knotted off my threads in the middle back there. So I'm stitching back on myself, popping my needle in between those two threads, pulling it nice and tight, and that's going to lock it off onto itself. I'm going to go through again, and then I'm going through both of those threads through that loop there. And that is it. It's as simple as that. And I almost can't believe it myself. So I'll take my pins out, or if you don't have any pins, you don't need to do that bit. Turn this fabulousness inside out. Look at that. So I can't wait to see what everybody does with this. This is where you'll see for sure that your stitches are the exact right size, and this is why they need to be that lovely small little 1/4 of an inch, because otherwise you can see them. You can see the stitches and you get like a little ripple effect if this stitch is too big. So that's why we want it to be small. So my cushion, obviously because this is slightly smaller than this, it's going to be a little bit of an effort to get it in, but that's okay because that's what we want. If it's not a little bit of an effort, you might need to double check your measurements. So let's pop this lovely little fellow in here. Make sure that you pop your hand in, find the corner of that cushion and really shove it into the corner. Makes it nice and full. Flip it over. Fab. Loving it. Look at that. Already. Proper cushion. Giving my padding on the inside there a little bit of a shimmy because it's a bit uneven. Just give it a little bit of a massage. Now, we need to close it up. For this, you will definitely need some pins or need to secure it somehow. If you don't have any pins, you could use maybe some bulldog clips or something like that just to hold it together. I'll use a bit of both to show anybody out there who has one or the other that it's possible. So I'm going to press my insert down a little bit to give me a bit of space and a bit of fabric to play with here. And on one end I'm going to fold it in on itself by 1/2 inch because that's our sewing allowance. Holding that, I'm going to put my bulldog clip on there. Lovely. Look at this, actually a really lovely secure, and you're not going to get sort of pricked in the finger. Right, moving my way along, pulling tension. Make sure that your fold is consistent all the way down that line there. And if you've got a pattern fabric, you can use the pattern in the fabric to guide you. Or like me, I've got a pattern and a plain. So I'm using the weave and the pattern to guide me. I'm going to move on to my needles now, my pins rather. Okay, nearly there. One last pin after this one and then we can stitch this closed. Oh, it's nearly finished. I am going to re-thread my needle with a fresh bit of cotton. That wasn't long enough anyway. And then here, if you are familiar with a slip stitch or a ladder stitch, you can do that. If you would like to do a blanket stitch, which is visible from the face, you could do that. You could blanket stitch it in a really funky thread if you'd like. I'm going to slip stitch this closed, which basically is a hidden stitch that gets stitched in between the folds and you can't really see it from the face. The same again in my starting off. I'm going to start off by stitching, finding the end, looping my needle through in between those two threads, and then I'm going to tuck my little end down and I'm going to run my needle along the inside of that fold, going in opposite to where I've just come out, running the needle down. Again, tiny little baby 1/4 inch stitches here, again because we want it to be nice and tight. Running my needle down. And if, say for example, you wanted to wash your cushion cover, then you could just simply undo this stitching and restitch it, because you'll be a pro by that point. Particularly if you don't want to go to the expense of buying zips, etc., or you can't get hold of them, or if you're really fancy, you could put a zip in there. You could put a colourful zip in there. It doesn't have to be a complementing sort of hidden zip, does it? If you find that you catch your insert on the inside, don't worry, it's okay. It's not really going to affect your cushion. It will still look fabulous. And sometimes you might have to readjust this opening sometimes, like what I'm having to do here. Just give it a little shimmy around to get it back in line and back under tension. Last couple of stitches, and then, believe it or not, I can't believe it, we're done. And it's same again here, is you find that last little bit of fabric, pull the needle, loop your needle through your thread loop, backwards and forwards and covers, and pull it nice and tight, and that will lock it off. Go through it again, find your loop, pop your needle through that loop, pull it nice and tight, same again. And then what I like to do is, because if we cut this off here, we're going to have our legs hanging out the corner. So I actually loop my needle in. See, it's come out of that bit of fabric there. I'm going to pull it in here like this, pull some tension onto it, careful not to cut your fabric, snip it off, and it's hidden inside your cover. And I can't quite believe it. No sewing machine, a needle and thread and some basic tools, and I've made a fabulous cushion. And you could make whatever style or design you like. So happy creating.